Hello and welcome back to the Store Hero podcast. This week I'm joined by Cody Wittick, co-founder and co-CEO of Kinship, a leading digital marketing agency in performance-based, dealing with some brands including Simply Modern, Purdy and Fig, and even Native as well. Cody, welcome to the show.
Thomas, thanks for having me. Excited to
No
jam.
problem at all. Where are you dialing in from today?
Orange County, California.
Slightly better weather than the west of Ireland, I can assure you, even though it's not too bad today.
Hey
But
man, we've been experiencing some June gloom over here, so I'm experiencing the cold, wet, and gloomy Europe.
as per par for the course. Listen, Cody, we'll get right into it. We always typically start these podcasts by getting our guests to introduce themselves, who they are, and what do you work at?
Yeah, so you want me to go into prior to starting Kinship?
Yeah, I think you have a bit of an interesting background that I think is quite relevant here.
Yeah, so before starting Kinship, we're a performance marketing agency, e-commerce growth agency. We've actually gone through quite a different involvement over the years. When we first started, we were calling ourselves an influence marketing agency. Before that, that's where I cut my teeth in marketing, doing influencer marketing at a brand called Kalo. They created the silicone wedding ring market, and I worked with a lot of professional athletes and celebrity talent, and really saw the power of getting product into people's hands at scale. As you can might imagine, a silicone wedding ring, incredibly cheap. So we're afforded the opportunity to just seed a ton of product to lots of different influencers. And then building relationships with those folks, saw the power of just utilizing their likeness in Facebook ads, and just saw crazy performance there. So, which ultimately led me to starting Kinship and utilizing both the power of advertising alongside influencer. And we still have influencer as a part of our ecosystem today, but it's not the end all be all. And hence why we've, I guess, rebranded over the years away from just an influence marketing agency to looking at the full growth of the new customer acquisition.
Nice. I mean, I had a quick look at your LinkedIn there before, so I want you to name drop one or two of the athletes that you worked with, and also maybe the time period when we're talking about influencer marketing. It's gone through quite a shift in the last 6, 7, 8 years. So it'd be kind of interesting to understand when you might have kicked off with Qualo in that influencer marketing role, and also some of the athletes that you got to work with.
Yeah, so like Steph Curry, LeBron James, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jason Aldean, all these
Wow.
big time celebrity talent. And it all started with just literally, hey, Thomas, love to send you some product. Or just sneakily, not even DMing them, but just sending it to their locker room or things like that. And then just transpired from there. So I mean, certainly influencer from start to finish has evolved over time, just as these platforms have changed, but still all about building relationships at the end of the day.
100%, 100%. It's definitely changed quite a bit. I think every D2C operator could only dream of getting LeBron James to wear their gear by sending free product today. So things have definitely changed in the past couple of years. I suppose you've quite experience and quite a view into some of the largest brands operating in the Shopify ecosystem, particularly I suppose from a performance marketing and a paid media buyer perspective. How has the role changed in the past 3-4 years?
My immediate response to that is that the platform, or Meta specifically, is trying to get less and less human decision making, which I think is a good thing, and that's ultimately what we lean into at Kinship, is to remove human bias, remove the human decision making, lean into the $1 trillion of spent on a platform, on a machine learning system to ultimately make better decisions than you. So you've seen things like ASC, you've seen things like removal of certain targeting aspects, all in efforts to get people to really believe in the machine of they can go out and find customers better than you think you can. So yeah, I'd say that's one of the biggest things that's transpired. That's way different from 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Does that require some kind of a lot of confidence and a lot of discipline in the early days to trust the machine that it is going to make that decision better than you can? You know, if you've been running these ad campaigns and these accounts for such a long time, you might always kind of, again, bias towards, I know better than the machine. This account is different. But what you're saying is just leave the machine do the work.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately why we believe in cost controls and running ad accounts. If people aren't familiar with cost controls, it's just basically giving Facebook accountability to you can only spend X to acquire a customer, and that goes into you got to know your finances, which is I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But that's why we think we should be maximizing volume at profitable spend versus trying to only solve for performance. We want to keep the performance the constant. So, yeah.
On the topic of cost controls, we won't go too deep into it. Are you on the big caps camp or the cost caps camp?
Oh, we're both. It's pretty agnostic, honestly. We run generally more cost controls or cost caps versus bid caps, but it's honestly it's in the margins in terms of the differences. And sometimes minimum ROAS, which is another form of cost control, or target ROAS, which is probably a better way of putting it. So yeah, we're big fans of all three.
Absolutely. Before we, I suppose, dive into more of the financy stuff, we'd kind of love to get your thoughts on creatives. So, obviously creatives, again, with more so leaning towards relying on the meta algorithm to really make the decisions for you. One of the biggest levers that you still have at your disposal today is the creatives that you give to the platform, that you feed it. You could
100%.
have hundreds, if not thousands, of creatives being fed into the meta platform on a weekly, monthly basis, whatever it's going to be. It's easy to, I think I saw on your Twitter during the week, you can spray and pray, but, having a methodical framework to work towards is only going to benefit people. From somebody who works with some of the biggest brands on Shopify through these platforms, have you any key tips, tricks, or, pieces of advice for our listeners?
I mean, there's a variety of ways. I think about it in three different frameworks in terms of you want volume. Everybody understands that. Like we need more creative. But you also need variety, diversity of creative. So one thing that Meta will tell you is that you need, people take best performing ad, they make small iterations. In the actual auction, Facebook sees that as the exact same ad, so you end up in ad fatigue really quickly. You need a variety of different placements, variety of different asset types to really get greater efficiency within Facebook. And so variety of volume, variety of content, volume of content, and also just refreshing your accounts with new creative constantly. At least every 2 weeks, you're taking out bottom spenders, putting in new ones, or just duplicating campaigns with new content. Either or, constantly getting creative. How you get all that creative is influencer seeding. So sending out product is one of the most cost-effective ways. UGC, going to your customers, branded assets. Those are the biggest things that I think a lot of people come to us for. In combination of how we media buy is kind of that just perfect symbiotic relationship between profitable spend and creative volume and variety. But yeah, that is the key question. That is like a huge, in terms of human forward creative, that tends to be the biggest roadblock is how do I get this at scale and enough, and while also keeping the cost down.
That's the trick. It's really, it's easy to just say we need a ton of creative, but creating it in house, it requires a ton of money, time, and effort to kind of get it right. And often the less polished UGC stuff ends up performing really, really well anyway. It's hard to replicate that at scale. Just, I suppose, as a benchmark, and again, every account that I'm sure you're working with, every business will be incredibly different here. When we talk about volume of new creatives on a bi-weekly, monthly basis, would you have some rough frameworks or benchmarks in terms of numbers here, I suppose?
Well, I'd say, I mean, a lot of the insights into the ad accounts that we see, it's definitely you're having 100 or more assets that are actually live, not just like launched. Because a lot of people, the way that they test is that they launch a bunch of creatives and then they give it a couple $100 of spend and then turn it off. Again, this goes into like the nitty gritty of how you actually media buy and what your bid strategy is. Like for us, for example, we're not turning off an ad hardly ever, just because if Facebook spends behind it, that's deeming it successful. If it's not, then might as well give it the opportunity, leave it on. But yeah, so I would say 100, 150 ads, just as a general rule of thumb, is like what you want to get to. But yeah,
Very different.
it's there's not like a magic number, because it's obviously based on how much you're spending as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just curious to get your context just with some of the stores that you guys tend to work with there. You kind of interestingly touched on there, I suppose, how you're doing your bidding strategy. And personally, just from, I suppose, my own experience with Store Hero in the past 18 months, the role of the paid media buyer, is definitely becoming a bit more finance orientated. Is that something you've seen change at Kinship in your own experience?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, all of our media buyers have to be gritty in the forecasting of the way that we're forecasting businesses and forecasting the P&L. So because the way that we're media buying, we're not just isolated. Yes, we're just running your Facebook ads, but we're also have visibility into your full business. And I think that more and more is the future, because Facebook, it doesn't just exist on itself. I can make Facebook look incredibly sexy. I can make it be a bunch of retargeting. I can have a bunch of view through attribution. I can make Facebook be a 10 ROAS. But it might not be the best thing for the business at large. And it's also it creates this dissonance. It creates this confusion between, well, my Facebook media buying agency is reporting this, but I'm not actually seeing this in my ad account or in my bank account. So, and especially because we run cost controls, it becomes much more around what is the performance of the overall business and how are these ads performing and how do we improve, or how do we scale? So that's some of the nitty gritty that we're getting into, and I think it's a good thing.
So moving away from ROAS as that North Star metric, which dominated the industry for such a long time, to more kind of
Yeah.
harder line metrics like contribution margin, AMR, all those kind of guys.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. No, it's a big shift that we see. It still baffles me the amount of clients that we speak to that are just trying to maximize their ROAS without really understanding the type of attribution window that has been set, or even I suppose the mix between, trying to maximize efficiency versus, trying to drive maybe a lower efficiency at a much higher volume in the name of the game to try and drive a more profitable business. Still isn't as mainstream as you would like to see it, but it's definitely improving.
Of course. Yeah, it's huge.
100%. Probably recurring theme here. I do take quite a look at your Twitter every day. Anyone listening, I would advise to follow Cody's Twitter, drop in knowledge bombs there every day of the week. I came across a really interesting one probably 2 weeks ago, just as I was scrolling one evening, way too late. You kind of said, if your agency isn't looking at these four things, you really need to take note and have a look at them. The four were delayed attribution multiplier percentage, blended COGS, pretty standard, above target spend analysis, and creative diversity. Would love to kind of just get your take on maybe the first one there, delayed attribution multiplier percentage, and just kind of hear what you have to say about that.
Well, ultimately, I think what we think is that 28-day click within Meta, we're not running campaigns, to be clear, on 28-day click, of course, but ultimately we're leveling up our 7-day or 1-day click campaigns to measure the delta lift because of what our clicks are actually driving, because we know that not all purchasers fall within that 7-day click window where Facebook's optimizing. So there's 21 more days where those people clicked and saw the ad that we think that we drove and that purchase, and we should take credit for that, ultimately measuring up to the most possible date of a 28-day click window. So 28-day click with no view through attribution is the most reliable metric we can lean into for what our meta ads are driving. View through attribution leads to a lot of fluff that attributes sales that would otherwise already be happening. So instead of like someone view through, they literally scrolled by your ad without clicking on it, that bought at a separate time, that Facebook's attributing that sale to their ads, even though they didn't actually click and buy, but most of the time they bought it separately due to the efforts of another channel. And that would still attribute a sale to meta ads. And we don't actually believe running, wasting ad dollars on meta optimizing for these types of quote unquote purchasers that we don't ultimately want to take credit for or optimize the pixel towards. So ultimately, when we're looking at like that tweet that you're bringing up, is we're mostly looking at what is the delta and also what is the view through attribution fluff that you have in the ad account. Sometimes it's 100%, sometimes it's 50%, where you're looking at your ad account dashboard and says a 2.5, and you actually look at comparing attribution windows to 28-day click looks like a 1.25. And so that's something that a lot of people are not clear on. They don't know. And it goes back to my previous point of, having your agency be in the know of the overall business, because I think that's what it leads to, where there's a lot of attribution confusion around those things. And so we want to eliminate as much confusion as possible. We want just click purchasers, click data that's informing the decisions.
Yeah, as you said, easy to make a Facebook account or a Meta account look good if you're just playing with the attribution windows. Obviously, you've kind of mentioned there 7-day click is that North Star to be gunning for, but obviously really, really interesting just to be able to monitor out on a longer time horizon as well, just to see the uplift there. Last piece there, I'd love to kind of quiz you on. The same tweet was on the above target spend analysis, wasted spend as percentage of total spend. Obviously, this sounds like the holy grail for a lot of brands to be able to understand this. How do you guys go about thinking about that at Kinship?
Yeah, honestly, we're looking at it's something that we do in the audit process where we're looking at, okay, how much spend has gone above break even. Now, this is not taking into consideration the business model, because we have brands that shouldn't be break even. They should be going into the negative because they have incredible LTV. Purdy and Fig, for example, like that's the North Star of a brand that has done this really successfully up to 50 million in revenue.
Incredible brand.
Yeah. So, but for the sake of the exercises, we're looking at, okay, how much money has been spent above break even CAC, based on our unit economics, to show that, okay, if cost controls could help solve and eliminate a lot of this overspend, that leads to more contribution margin, that leads to more just profitability at the end of the day. And so it's a fun exercise. It's, again, like I said, the nuance of this is just the business model at large. Of course, there's times where you need to, eat into your margin for different sales or different peak buying periods, etc. But that is the above target spend analysis that we do. And in the audit process, I guess you probably wouldn't be surprised how much overspend is happening on some of these accounts.
That makes a ton of sense. I think it's one thing every brand would really, really like to understand. Just touching on Purdy and Fig there, I've listened to Jack on a couple of podcasts. Incredible business, really, really dialed in operator as well. I've learned a lot from him over the years. Listen, Cody, I know you have to jump. I just want to say thank you very, very much for coming on the show. If people are looking to get in contact or follow you on LinkedIn or definitely on Twitter, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's just at Cody, CODY _ Wittick, WITTICK, on Twitter. And then I think LinkedIn there's no underscore. So I got to eliminate the underscore. But yeah, DM me. I love to jam.
Perfect. I'll drop the links there in the show notes as well. Really, really appreciate it, Cody. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.